Good morning, everybody. I want to start by thanking so much all the folks from Saloona who invited me here and have hosted me here for a wonderful few days. Amy, Shira, Karmit, Liat, various people who took care of various things for me, and it's my first visit here, and it's been really wonderful, and so thank you so much for having me. My name is Alyssa Kaaamahort Page, and I'm the Chief Community Officer of a company called She Knows Media. And I'm going to talk today about being a social media entrepreneur. However, I believe that a lot of the things I've learned over the last decade as an entrepreneur are very applicable to figuring out what you want to do in life and moving forward with it, even if it's not to create a startup. How many of you do have your own business? Oh, well, so a lot of you. That's amazing. How many of you have a little dream to have your own business? And how many of you think you have a big idea inside you? All right. So this is a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, and I am going to tell you my backstory, and then I'm going to walk through all of that, but let's get right to it. And this is my company, She Knows Media. I'm actually the co-founder of BlogHer, which became part of the She Knows Media family 1 year ago, and that's, of course, part of my startup story, to have that, what they call an exit. And now we reach over 80 million visitors a month across the globe. And we also reach more than 200 million social fans, friends, and followers across all our social profiles. And our mission is to help women inspire other women and create opportunities for those women. So we're very, very focused on that goal. So let's rewind 10 years ago. I was in the tech industry in Silicon Valley. I actually worked for 2 different companies that were co-founded by Israelis. So I'm I worked with a lot of Israelis, native Israelis, but also Israelis by way of Russia in the engineering department. So I have a lot of fond memories of that time. And I was working in those companies for about 7 years. So I worked all through the dot-com boom, and then all through the dot-com bust. And at some point, while I was working for a company called Terion, which is founded by Zaki and Shlomo Rakib, which some of you may have heard of, you know, we went through great times, and then we went through not so great times. And I started to get really 2 things. Burnt out on having to do more and more with fewer and fewer people as layoff after layoff after layoff happened. But I got actually burnt out on 3 things. That's how burnt out I was. So that was the first burnt out. The second burnt out was I was tired of hitting what I truly believe was a glass ceiling, where I had a whole team of product managers and product marketing folks reporting to me, and I reported to the VP alone. So it was all reporting to me and then just me reporting to him. And over the course of the last 2 years I worked there, there were something like 6 successive hymns who became my VP, my boss. And I began to feel like I was never going to advance in that position. Now, part of that might be because I came into that role as a product manager. And to be a VP would have been 3 levels up from where I started. And I honestly think that whether it's good times or bum times, when you come into a company, it's hard for the leadership of that company to envision you more than 2 steps ahead of where you started. So that's why people jump positions often, because if you are yourself a manager or an executive or a leader, we close our minds to the potential of our employees. We see them as how they started with us, and we forget that just as we're growing and evolving and would never expect to be held back because 5 years ago we didn't know X, Y, or Z, well, the same should apply to our staff. But that seems to be a pattern that I've observed many, many times. You come in, you maybe get 1 promotion, maybe even a second, but then you just kind of stall out. And it's a lack of vision from above you, in my opinion, and that's why people jump. So, and the third thing I got burnt out on, though, was not really, in the end, being responsible, not just for the great things that happen, but for the mistakes. It's actually really frustrating when things go wrong and you didn't have any control. where someone above you made a decision, you disagreed, you stated your case, but you didn't have the power and you didn't have the control. And that's what drives a lot of people into opening their own business or starting a startup, because you want to have control of the good and the bad. You want to say, well, if it's screwed up, I'm responsible. And I can live with that. It's much harder to live with someone else being responsible for the failure. So you get sick of knocking your head against the wall, and you're like, I would just really like to knock this side of my head against the wall. And that's another reason people leave their work, right? Because you feel like you've just completely bruised this side, and you need a new bump. So it came around to being about the 7th layoff that was going to happen in less than 2 years. And it wasn't just happening at our company, it was happening all over the valley. And I thought, you know what, I might actually be on this list. Like, they've gotten pretty bare bones. This could be my time. And I'd heard that the package was still okay, and so I was like, maybe I'm going to get this little opportunity. And Friday rolled around, and the layoffs came and went, and I was not laid off. And I spent all weekend being so depressed I still had a job. And by Sunday afternoon, I was like, this is not okay. This is not normal. Like, you shouldn't have to be depressed. You have to go to work. So at that point, I thought, I don't have to be. I can change this. So on Monday, I went in and I asked the acting COO if it was too late to get on the list. And he was, this was the nadir of the bus. This is 2003. These times were bad, and he just looked at me like I was insane. And then it turned into a bit of a drama and negotiation and, working things out. But ultimately, I figured out a transition plan for 6 weeks. I got the package, I left, I did some consulting with them, and I was free. And part of what enabled me to do that with confidence is that I was a little bit of a pack rat with money, frugal, thrifty. I had my cushion. And so one of the things I always say to people is, build your nest egg. Plan for, even if you don't know what your big idea is yet, save like you know, and you want to have the freedom to pursue it. So I thought that I would just go get another job in this industry. It was the cable telecom, hardware, networking systems. And I wasn't doing anything about it. And after a while, I had that same kind of weekend epiphany, like, wow, this is really not like you. You're pretty directed. If you want something, you go get it. And you're not doing anything about getting another job in this industry. Maybe you don't actually want one. And I was like, whoa, what am I going to do then? Because I had never thought that I wanted to be a solopreneur, a business owner. My role model was my mom, who in the 70s was like your prototypical second-wave feminist. She went to work when I was like 11, and she worked her way up the corporate ladder. She became the first female vice president her company had ever had, the first female they sent to Japan, because all along they kept saying you could never send a woman to Japan. So she was like hard charging. She didn't retire till she was 70, and her last job was a startup she co-founded. So she was like, so that was I thought I'm going to climb that corporate ladder. But at around this time, I started blogging. And I was just blogging for fun. I was writing movie reviews and book reviews and restaurant reviews, and I got struck by the fact, well, here's what happened. I sent a restaurant review to a few of my coworkers from Terrion, even though I was gone from there, because it was near their office. And I said, oh, you should go try this place for lunch. 2 people. When I went there to the restaurant, like a week later, there was like a dozen people from Terrion there. And I said, hey, guys, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, your review got passed around the office. We all tried it. This is our lunch place now. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like, there's something there. The weight and trust given to social recommendation, to peer advice and recommendation. And how could organizations use that authentically to build their audience and build relationships and create a community out of their customers? So, having never thought I would go down that route, I started a consulting firm. And one of the things I did was I needed a case study. So I went to an organization I knew and asked them if they would let me do a case study with them on blogging and online marketing. And they didn't have to pay me as long as I could go use that information to go sell my services elsewhere. So You know, I'm all for ask for what you're worth, ask to be paid, but sometimes, strategically, you can also give something away to get something bigger later. So that was going great. I spent a year making no money, so it was good I had that nest egg. But then I spent a year and I was building that business, and it was on a trajectory. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And then I met my two co-founders, Lisa Stone and Joy Desjardins, who were both also bloggers and both also consulting in the space. And there was this big discussion going on, and you probably still hear it today. It's kind of centered around the topic, where are the women? So where are the women in technology? Where are the women in Congress? Where are the women on the Sunday morning talk shows or on the op-ed pages of major newspapers? Where are the women speaking at conferences? And in our case, the brouhaha was about where are the women in blogging? Because a political blogger had written a post entitled, Where are the women who blog? And it was an entirely rhetorical question because he had the answer. Women were never going to adopt technology. Women weren't going to use the internet. Women didn't want to write their opinions online and share them and get into debates and mix it up. They couldn't handle the rough and tumble world of political blogging. And so, of course, all the women, I was blogging about politics. Lisa, my ultimate co-founder, was blogging about politics. And of course, we were all like, dude, we're right here. And what a lot of people do to solve the question, where are the women, is they make and publish a list. And the problem with a list is it's usually like 10 people, right? That's a good, 10 great women to watch, 10 women on Twitter you should follow, and 10 women in tech. But the problem is people's imagination's pretty limited. So even not being from America, I bet you can guess that when people do their 10 top women in tech, you're going to have your Marissa Mayer, you're going to have your Sheryl Sandberg, you're going to have this set group that takes up half the list. And then maybe you'll hear a couple of new names. But it doesn't really make it clear the great diversity of women who are out there achieving things. It still keeps it pretty limited. So we had this idea that what if you created a conference that was about technology and blogging, and we weren't going to talk about being women, we were just going to be women talking about politics and technology and business and all those topics. And it wasn't a company. It wasn't for-profit, it wasn't non-profit. We were just three chicks with credit cards, as I like to say, who put a down payment on a venue, not as nice as this, without a view like that. And in 120 days, we had planned this event. And it was only after that, it was just a labor of love. And it was a passion project. And it was only after that that we realized there was opportunity there because there was a community of women who wanted things. They wanted to meet face-to-face. They wanted to come together in person because it can get kind of isolating behind your computer. And finding other people and talking to them and looking at them eye to eye and giving them a hug, it's actually really wonderful. But they wanted to find each other every day, too. Back in 2005, there was no central place to figure out what women were saying online. You could figure out what women's media wanted to tell women online, but you couldn't really find all the women and what they were saying. And then some subset said, I wish we could make money doing this because I found something I really like and I'm really good at. And we thought working together and aggregating ourselves together, we could make money. And that's how we decided to start a company. We bootstrapped it for 2 years. I went through my entire life savings and took out $50,000 in home equity debt before we finally decided to get funding because we realized growing organically would only get us so far. We really needed to grow 10x, and we needed to do it more quickly than organic growth. We need to hire people. So we ended up doing several rounds of VC funding. That already puts us in the less than 10% of women-founded companies getting venture capital. And then a year ago, in order to fully round out the capabilities of what's needed for a media company today, we joined forces with She Knows, and together we have twice the reach. We're the #1 women's network in the US, and we have a lot more capabilities. And I think that's an important point, that every time we either got funding or partnered up, it was because we needed to scale. We needed to go to the next level. Some industries are not as volatile as others. The media industry and the internet industry is extremely volatile. I mean, when you think about this, when we started BlogHer, this did not exist. People did not go on the internet on their phone, right? Twitter did not exist, Facebook did not exist, YouTube did not exist. So we've had to change our business a lot over the years. So that's all sort of the backstory. And now I'll give you some advice if you want to use the internet to advance your business. One of the number one questions people ask me is, how do I get more people to come follow me online? How do I get them to read my stuff online? And how do I get them to engage with me? And the primary thing to know is that people follow you because they can know you and be known by you online. The expectation set of consumers, of audience members, of users is entirely different than it was 10 years ago. You actually expect to talk to a human. If you have a complaint about Coca-Cola, you actually think you're going to find a human from Coca-Cola to answer it, and you know what? You probably will, because they have teams of people whose job is to troll, Twitter and Facebook and whatever, and find people who are cranky and try to make them feel better about it. So people want to know you, and they want to be known. And they expect human response, and they expect transparency. Now, it's still true, very few people can amass a huge following just because they are so clever and awesome, and they're just their personality alone. Most of them are providing either useful information, or they're focused on a niche where it's really hard to find very much content, and you can sort of own that corner of the internet. Or they're providing some unique utility. In the business world, it might be called, what's your value proposition? What are your differentiators? What are you doing that other people aren't doing? Or if they're doing it, they're certainly not doing it as well in ways that you can really easily explain. And only you can bring your perspective and your voice. So nobody, I think is it Oscar Wilde who said, be yourself, everyone else is taken, or I forget it. But either Oscar Wilde or Noel Coward, and those guys are really not that much alike, but one of them was very clever. And the thing is, this upper left quadrant is really important because what happened with the advent of Web 2.0 is it stopped being all broadcast. It stopped being all push. Let us tell you what to think. Let us tell you what to wear. Let us tell you what to watch. People expected to have a voice back. And they expected to be able to tell you what they wanted to watch and tell you what they wanted to do. So it is incumbent upon us to listen. And now with the advent of data, and there's so much data available now, if you have anything to do, if you have any website, if you are doing anything on social, you can get so many analytics about what your audience really wants and does. But this is why people follow you. They're looking for something they cannot get elsewhere. You don't want to be the fifth choice for anything. You want to be the first choice for something, even if it's a narrow thing. When we did our annual study of social media usage about a year ago, it was a pretty high number. 31% of people report that they've abandoned a tool, an app, or a service in the past year. How many of you have abandoned, downloaded an app, never used it, used to use a tool? For me, it's Pinterest. Maybe that's a horrible admission, maybe not here, but in the US, I'm a woman and I don't use Pinterest, and that's like, what? Are you sure? You sure you're female? It just didn't do enough for me, so I abandoned it. And I was trying to use it. So how many of you have abandoned something in the last year that you used to use, right? There's too much, right? There's so much. So you want to be, and the primary reason people said they left is because it didn't serve a necessary function. When you get busy, when you have time on your hands, like if I'm really on vacation and let's face it, probably bored at some point, sure, I'll break out the Pinterest. But when I'm time constrained, or as I like to say, time impoverished, you're going for the must-have, not the nice-to-have. So the media world has changed radically in the last 10 years, not just because of the mobile, although that's definitely a huge part of it, The whole advertising market has changed. I mean, 10 years ago, it really was just banner ads on websites and sometimes the dancing, get rid of your belly fat, dancing animated ads. You know, and content, and what has really happened is that people, because of the more and more data available, brands are really taking advantage of programmatic commoditizing advertising. So where you can make money online has changed a lot. Probably where you're going to make money online is with content. Content, branded content, sponsored content, you know, something around that. And content that can live with editorial content or original content, right? Just running ads is a very tough game for most people who have a web business, just straight ads. And what a lot of companies are doing is they're just trying to diversify, constantly diversify. But this concept of diversifying how you make your money is not unique to being on the web. So we do events, we have content, branded content, we have advertising, we have video. We're doing all sorts of different things. A lot of bloggers are productizing, they'll make ebooks, they'll run like, you know, some of the health bloggers will run like 30-day challenges where they provide all the fitness, you know, the exercises or all the recipes or whatever, and they're productizing their content. But this summer at our annual conference, we had the film director, Ava DuVernay, who directed the film Selma, which I don't know if it played out here, but she was our closing keynote speaker, and she talked about diversifying, and that everyone she knew in Hollywood is diversifying so that they have multiple streams of revenue. And that's why someone like Gwyneth Paltrow is doing Goop, her website, and Sarah Michelle Gellar just launched a food company. Especially women, because women more than men deal with this kind of expiration date in Hollywood, right? So the smart women are figuring out, what can I do that I can control? What can I do that's my own? And that's happening so much. So thinking about how many different ways you can develop revenue and getting to revenue quickly. It's really important. So I'm just going to talk about some basic things you should know. If you are thinking, how many of you think about things like getting funding, being more of a traditional startup, even loans, small business loans? How many of you are sort of want that kind of? But a lot of you said you had small businesses or there's a, ooh, okay. Here's the thing. There's a lot of different kinds of funding you can get. I actually think it's pretty awesome that so many of you said, I have my own thing, and so few of you said, but I'm looking for outside sources for funding, and here's why. Because once you go for funding, it's a pretty tough road. You owe someone. They're not giving you money, you know, for fun, right? And you do lose some control, and you do lose some ability to do exactly what you want. There are a lot of ways you can go about funding your business that aren't about going the VC route or even the angel route. You know, we bootstrapped, so that's why we got to revenue really quickly so that we could support our business. We bartered. Our first website was a barter arrangement with a company where we gave them sponsorship credit at one of our conferences, and then they did our website for us. There's crowdfunding now, which is an option that didn't exist several years ago. Everyone I've ever known who ever did crowdfunding said it is a lot of work. You will spend your life trying to get people and promoting it, and you will begin to feel like you are such a burden on your network, because all you can do is develop your network and then go to them. However, fundraising the traditional way through investors, that is a lot of work too. And anytime you're doing that, that's time you're not spending on building your actual business. So you have to think really hard about that. There's good old-fashioned debt, small business loans, that kind of stuff. There's friends and family. You'd be amazed, like people actually like to help people they love. So it's a wacky concept. But L is for lifestyle business. Have any of you ever heard that term before? So in Silicon Valley, which I admit is a totally rarefied environment, there's lifestyle business has a negative connotation people say, is that really a company or is it more of a lifestyle business? And what they mean is, oh, you don't really want to grow it to be like the billion-dollar Facebook unicorn. You just want to make money and live your life. And I have a very different perspective, which is if you could actually build a business that supported you and your family in a lifestyle that was comfortable, and maybe even hire some employees and help some other families live their life, congratulations. I think that's the most awesome thing in the world. If I had to do it again, I don't know if I would go the VC route. So I'm all about figuring out how you can run a lifestyle business. I think lifestyle businesses are cool. But this last one, revenue, is something that's really hard for a lot of business owners. Once you start a business, you are a salesperson. You may not like it. You may not like the label. You may not actually like the activity of it. You may not like the idea of it. The first thing you may run out and do is hire a salesperson. But it's your company, you're in charge, and ultimately you're responsible for that company making money, even if you hire a head of sales. And for when you're small and starting out, a lot of customers, they want to meet you because you're the owner, because you're the one who started it, because you're the founder. So you are going to have to get out there and show your face and be a salesperson. And you're going to end up thinking about revenue way more than you ever thought you wanted to in life. So it's just something to like suck it up and realize that that's what happens. You become a salesperson. Now, one of the first things we did when we actually hired, when we got our first round of funding, we were able to hire real live full-time employees. We hired a senior saleswoman that we knew, who knew the New York media business. I mean, we knew that wasn't our expertise, but it is amazing how much the three of us as co-founders still had to get out there on the road, still had to go do, still had to help close these deals. Because you're the one who started it, you're the one who's expected to be passionate about it and to be able to convey what's so awesome about what you're doing. And when the founder or the owner doesn't get on the road and doesn't show their passion and doesn't show why what they're doing is so awesome, it actually is less convincing and it's a little weird. People are like, but why don't I ever see? Like, if they started it, why aren't they out there pounding the pavement for it? So I know that I do not think I'm a salesperson. I never had a sales title, but I spend an incredible amount of time selling. So the psychology of money. Why do people give you money? First of all, people give money to people. They don't give money to ideas and businesses, really. The first thing it is about you. When we made our very first deck to go out and try and get funding, we sat down with a really well-known investor and entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, and he looked at our deck, and he gave us this piece of advice that I tell everyone I ever give advice to. We had our slide about us, the three of us as founders, at the end. Like, oh, by the way, here's us. We didn't consider ourselves to be the asset because we weren't previous entrepreneurs. We weren't particularly famous, right? We were just like three women with huge passion and a big idea. And he was like, this needs to be slide number 1. You need to start by telling them why they should give money to you. Not only because they're giving you money, and there needs to be a trust and an understanding, but very few companies start with a plan and keep on that plan, and they just keep doing that plan, and they never have to change their plan, and they never have to pivot their plan, and their plan's awesome and everything's perfect. Everyone lived happily ever after the end. Almost every company has to pivot, adapt, be flexible, try new things, and you want your investors to trust you to be the person who's going to lead that and not think once the idea you walked in with isn't exactly working and you got to change, that they better get somebody else because you're only connected. So they got to believe in you. The other reason people give you money is because you can show you're going to spend it well. You have demand. You have people who want you to grow. You can scale and people want you to scale. And so you got to know how you're going to spend the money. You got to know, and the last reason they give you money is because they want to make money. Like, no one's giving you money because they don't ever want to get it back. They want to get it back, and they not only want to get it back, they want to get it back with a multiple. They really want to get it back. Once you take that money, you're beholden. So no one gives you money because you're tired. No one gives you money because you need more employees so you don't have to work 24/7. No one gives you more money to do a better job of everything you're already exactly doing. They want this to represent some way to grow and change. And no one gives you money because you're oh so close. Because if you're oh so close, just gut it out and get it done. So you have to ask yourself, who do you want to be beholden to? How much fire do you have in your belly to be dominant, to like grow, to scale like that? And will it kill you if someone beats you? So just a few quick lessons, 5 minutes. I came all this way. Co-founders rock, partners rock. What are you looking for in partners? You don't want to have identical skills, you want to have complementary skills. Overlapping skills leads to a lot of chest beatings while everyone tries to figure out who's got the best same idea. So you want to fill in each other's gaps. You want to be able to have tough conversations, not just easy ones. It's really fun to have the visionary ideas. It's less fun when something goes wrong. And you want them to be, they don't have to have the same skills, but they got to have the same work ethic. Because the biggest reason partnerships break up is because someone isn't pulling their weight, and everybody else gets pretty pissy about that. Build your network, both affinity groups and individuals. And think in thin slices. You can get a mentor who just teaches you about one thing. You don't have to find a mentor who teaches you how to be the best person you can be. You can find a mentor who just teaches you about how to do X, Y, or Z. And stop setting the bar so high before you start getting yourself out there. There's this term, minimum viable product, in the lean startup philosophy, which is you get something out there in the hands of customers, and then you iterate, iterate, iterate. And a lot of times women, we wait till we think we're perfect before we put ourselves out there. Get yourself out there, share your idea, get some advice, offer to speak at conferences, offer to write an article, offer to do things. Set a lower bar for yourself. Prioritize people over terms, over valuation, meaning, just like when someone gives you money, they're giving money to you as a person. If you're gonna make a partnership, the people you're making the partnership are really important. Do you trust them? Can they trust you? You're getting in bed with a partner. You gotta, like, first of all, think about, do I really want to work with these people every day? And then never let someone seduce you with some magical big possible payoff with a lot of strings attached, when you could just settle for a better, fair payoff with less strings attached. Because at the end of the day, even if you wanted to walk away with nothing, you want to feel like it was fair. Nothing worse than feeling like it was unfair. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but it does buy you freedom. So start saving up that nest egg now. I wear a necklace that says, "You are free," because anywhere I choose to be, whether it's a job, whether it's my relationship, like only I keep myself there. And money makes it a lot easier. Now, I should clarify, money doesn't buy happiness after a certain point. If you're making no money and then suddenly you're making $30,000, you're gonna be happier. And I think in the United States, the breaking point is about $40,000, $50,000. That at that point, making more money doesn't make people happier. But under that, it sure does. So I'm not meaning to minimize that. And lastly, ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen if I take this risk, if I try this thing, if I go after my big idea? What's the worst that could happen? And make that fear concrete, not abstract. People say, I could fail. Yes, you could, and then what would happen? For me, I went through all my money, I had all that debt, I would have had to, let's say my boyfriend at the time left me, I would have to sell my condo, move back into my old twin bed in my mom's house at the age of 43. That, believe me, was not what I had in mind. Like, not what I was going for, but it's not the end of the world. And I think in a world where there are really tragic things that can happen, if you identify what's the tragic thing that could happen if I tried something and it failed, and I will quote the senior principal researcher at Intel, Genevieve Bell, her mother used to say to her, if it's not going to cause death or dismemberment, you should probably try it. And I think those are pretty good words to live by. So spell it out. What's the worst that could happen? These are bonus rounds. We'll share the deck, but I'm getting the hook. So I was going to tell you all about how awesome it is to use social media and why people love it and all that, but I will spare you. Thank you so much.